Welcome to my Site Code Diaries, your ultimate guide to digital experience excellence. Today's video is in the video series C# tutorial, and the topic is more into classes. I'm your host Jitendra Ghanekar. I'm in Site Code MVP Technology 2024. I have given my social media accounts on the screen. You can connect with me on those. So what's inside in this video? Initially, we will see what is class. We will revise what is class. We already seen the detail what is class in the last video. Then we will see field and property. Then we will try to find out the difference between field and property. Then we will move on to the methods. What are the methods? Then the difference between method and property. Then we will see a constructor. What is constructor? And at the end, I have added the additional information. So I will try to cover few questions which are can be asked in the interview. So I have collected that in the last section, which are related to field, property, and methods. If you are new to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel and click on the notification bell to get a latest update. Please click on a like button and do share this video with others. So let me start today's topic. So our first topic is class and its components. So what is class? A class is a fundamental building block of object-oriented programming. So what is object-oriented programming? We have a detailed video on that. You can have a look on that. So class is basically fundamental building block. So it is the block of your code. Okay. So it is a blueprint or a template for creating object or instances. So it is basically a blueprint or a template for creating the instances. Class defines the data and behavior that will associated with object created from that class. So what does it define? It defines the data. Data is defined by the fields and the properties, whereas behavior will be defined by the methods of that class. Okay. So what are the components in the class? So first is the fields. As I said, fields is defined by defines the data of the class. Then you have a methods which define the behavior of the class. Then you have a property which is again a data of your class. It also uses the encapsulation. It is used for the encapsulation also. Then you have a constructor, then access modifier, and the object. What is access modifier and what is object, that we have already seen in our previous video. So this video we are going to concentrate on fields, methods, properties, and constructor. Now we will see fields and property. So what is field? Fields are ordinary members, a variable or a member instances of a class. Then what is property? A property is a member that provides a flexible mechanism to read, write, or compute the value of the private field. So property uses the fields, private fields, for computing the values also. Okay, property has two methods inside, that is getter and set. It is also called a getter and setter. So what is get and what is set? The get accessor is used to retrieve the value of the property. So it is to get the value, or it is a retrieve the value. It returns the value of the property to the caller. So whoever is calling that property, it will give the value to the property. It is used when reading the value of the property. So it is basically used for the reading the property. What is set? The set accessory is used to assign a value to the property. So if you want to assign any value, then set is coming to the picture. It allows the caller to modify the value of the property. You can write the value on the using set, and it is used when assigning a value to the property. So fields are basically ordinary member variables. So you know what is variables now. The first video we have already seen what is variable. So fields are the variable of those class, whereas property is a member that provides some mechanism where you can read, write, and compute the value of the private field. We will see the difference between field and property in upcoming slide. Okay, before that, let's take an example of a field and property. So if you see, I have defined here a class called time period. Okay, and then I have defined here the underscore seconds, private double underscore second. This is basically a field. It's a variable. If you see, it's a variable of this class. Okay, and this is called as a field. Whereas what is property, if you see public double hours, so you see here this, where you have the opening curly bracket and closing curly bracket. Within that you have a get and sets. Okay, so this is how you write a property. In get, it is basically returning the hours. So whatever number of seconds, so you have a double second private variable here, divided by 3600 will give you the hours. Okay, and set, you are setting the value. Now here we have a validation also. If you see here, if value is less than 0 or greater than 24, okay, then it is throwing an error. Okay, so it's saying the valid range is between 0 and 24. So you can validate, you can have the validation before setting the value. So what it does when you setting the value or modifying the value is basically, if you see, it is updating the second, the field value, which is private. So outside, from the outside you can access the hours, but it's basically inside the class it is setting the value for the second. Okay, so this is the example of the field and property. Now we will see difference between field and property. The first feature is visibility. By default, fields are private, meaning they can only be accessed within the same class. Whereas properties can have a different access modifier, public, private, protected. Depending on your logic, you can use those. Then accessibility directly within the class. So fields are directly accessed within the class only, whereas property access through the getter and setter method, or directly depending on the implementation, how you have implemented, depending on that properties are accessed. Logic do not contain additional logic. Fields doesn't contain any logic. Properties can have the logic like validation, computation, or any other custom logic. You can have that. We have already seen the example where we are calculating the hours of the second in the property, whereas your field is a second, there is no logic. Okay, so this is the difference between the field and the property. And then uses, where does the fields are used? It is suitable for storing internal state or a data without additional logic. It is just to store the value which is within or internal to the class. For that only we can use the fields. Whereas property is used to provide the control access to the data with optional logic and encapsulation. So we have, if you have not seen the encapsulation video, I will recommend to watch that video. It will tell you that how you can use the property for the encapsulation. Now what is encapsulation, that also you can understand from that video. I will give the link in the description and also on the top I button. Okay, so please watch the encapsulation video, then you will understand this. So property is used to for the encapsulation or of optional logic. Now we will see what is method. Method is the building block of object-oriented programming. It contains related code together and makes program easier. So it will contain the contains related code within that lines of a code, which will make the your code also modular. Okay, you can have a separate method for the different purpose. Okay, this is an example of a method where we are calculating the area. Now if you see here, the public, this is called as a access specifier. So we are specifying the access. So what is access specifier, that we have already seen in last video. So okay, so here if you see a public, so it is public, so it can access anyone. Then return type. So what the values which is going to return, what is the type of that, so that is defined by here. So if you see here is a double is a return type, so whatever the value which will be calculated, that will get returned and its type will be double. Calculate area, that is the method name, and this is called as a parameter list. So what is parameter list here? you have a double length and double width. So those are two are the parameters, okay, of this. So you can have a many parameters for the method, whereas there is something called a method body. Method body means whatever logic which you are written in that method is called as a method body. Here I am calculating the area of a rectangle, so I am doing this logic length into width. So that is my method body, and it is returning that value, and that value must be double because your length is double and the width is also double. So its return type is a double. So this is how you define the method. And how will you call this method? Before that, the parameter list can be three types. You can have a value type, you can pass it as a reference type. Now difference between value type and reference type, we have already done one video. Okay, you can have a look on that. It must be in the same playlist. Then there can be an output, so you can do some logic and the value you can assign to that passed variable. So that is called as the output variable, and that variable you can access where it is getting called. Now how it is called? The calling of the method. If you see here, we are creating the rectangle object of a rectangle class, and then calling that dot object dot calculate area, as it is a public, you can access that anywhere, and then you are passing the values length and width. Okay, so this is how the methods are used. Now what is the difference between methods and properties? Invocation. So methods are invoked by calling the method with the parentness, open and close round bracket, and passing the arguments if any. You just now seen how it is called. Okay, whereas properties are called like you are calling the field directly. We can call it by giving a dot. Return value. Methods are may or may not return a value. Property typically returns a value. Property is basically used for that purpose only, right? You have to get the value, so it should return the value. Parameters, it can accept 0 or more parameters. Property typically used for setting the value. Okay, so there is no parameters as such. Then encapsulation. Methods are used to encapsulate the actions and the behaviors, whereas properties are used to encapsulate the data with control, access, and possibly additional logic. Now let's see what is constructor. Constructor is similar to a method that is invoked when an object of the class is created. It has the same name as that of the class and does not have any return type. So constructor is nothing but a method whose name is same as the class and it doesn't have any return type. It's a method only, but its name is same as a class. Okay, it can accept the parameters also, it can perform the logic within it, but it cannot return any value, and it gets called automatically when you create an object. So what are the different types of constructor we have? First is the parameterless constructor. And what is that? The constructor without parameters. Now what is parameters? We have already seen the parameters in the methods. So method can accept the parameters. So those parameters, if you have any value which you are passing to the method, that is called parameters. So constructor you can have without parameters, so there will not be any value passed to the constructor. Then you have a parameterized constructor with parameters. So if you are passing the values to the constructor and constructor are accepting it, that is parameterized constructor. And the last one is the default constructor. Now, what is default constructor? You do have not defined any constructor in your class, then it is called a default constructor. Okay, so this is an example. Now I've created a class area. Okay, and there I have two constructor created. If you see here, public area, now as we said, it has the same name as that of the class. My class name is area, so this is a method only. If you see, its name is area only, and it is not accepting the any parameters, so that is parameterless constructor, and it's doing its logic within that method. Okay, and it is not returning anything. So this is the parameterless constructor. And if you see the down, the public area, double length, double width. So again, the class name and the method name is same. It is not returning anything, and it is accepting two parameters. So it is a parameterized constructor where it is taking the length and width, and then it is calculating that, and that value is stored in the field here, calculate area. It is not returning that value. Okay, so this is your parameterized constructor, and if you do not have any constructor, then that is a default constructor will get called. So this is the constructor. Now we will see few additional topics or additional information or questions. Okay, the first is, what is the main method in C#? So main method is the entry point of the C# console application. So when you will create any console application, it will have the main method, and that is the entry point from where all the program will start. So it serves as the starting point of the execution of the program. When you run a C# console application, the runtime system looks for the main method and start executing code from there. So this is the example of a main method. If you see here, so if you observe, it has a static. So static means indicates that the method belonging to the class itself, okay, rather than instance of the class. Okay, it's a class. There is no need to this method is not belong to the object, but it belongs to the class. Void, you see here void, so it indicates that the method doesn't return any value. So void means you are not returning anything. Main is the name of your method, which is fixed and cannot be changed. So for the console application, you will have the main method and you cannot change that name. Okay, and then string array, an array of a string that represent the command line argument passed to the program when it is executed. It is basically a console application which can run from the command line also, and you can pass the values, and that values are the arguments here, and then you can have a logic here, so that will get executed. So this is the main method in the C#. Then what are the best practices of using constructor in C#? Use constructor to initialize the field of the class to their initial value. To understand the use of constructor, constructor is to initialize the field of the class to their initial value, not to write the logic. Constructor should have a clear and simple purpose. You should know what is constructor is doing, and that should be simple one. Overload constructor for flexibility. So you can use the overloading functionality or method overloading functionality to have the flexibility and constructor. So you can have parameterized constructor, you can have the normal constructor. Okay, you can have the different type of a parameters you're passing to the constructor. You can do those kind of flexibility. When defining the multiple constructor in a class, use constructor chaining to avoid the code duplication. Try to avoid the code duplication. If you are using a multiple constructor, like you are having the derived class and base class, then you should be taking care of you are not duplicating the code. Validate input parameters in constructor to ensure that they meet the requirement of the class. So whatever the input parameters, you make sure that those values are validated within the constructor itself. Use dependency injection. So what is dependency injection? We have a detailed and video for dependency injection. I will give the link on top. So you can use a constructor for dependency injection. And the last point is very important. Avoid performing costly operation or accessing the external resources excessively within the constructor. So first point where I say that you should use it for the initializing the field of the class, not for writing the logic. And if you are writing the logic, make sure that it is not a costly operation, because it will impact the performance of your application. Can you have a private constructor in C#? You can have the private constructor in C#. A private constructor is a constructor within the private access modifier, meaning it can only be called within the same class. It cannot be called from outside the class, not even from the derived class. So why you use a private constructor? It is used to implement for the singleton pattern. It is used for utility classes. If you have a utility classes which are static, then you can use the private constructor there, and then it can be used conjunction with the public static factory methods to control the object creation. So it can be used in the factory methods. So when we see a design pattern, then we can check in detail of this. So make sure, so understand that private, you can use a private constructor. Okay, you can have a private constructor. What is the difference between class and a struct in a C sharp? This is also a regular interview question. So what is the difference between class and struct? Let's see. First is the definition. So class are reference type and the struct are value type. Initiation allocated on the heaps, whereas structs are allocated on the stack or a inline. Default constructor, class provides the default constructor, struct may not provide by default. Inheritance, class support the inheritance, struct do not support inheritance. Performance, typically slow, class are typically slow because it's allocated on the heap. So due to the heap allocation, the classes are slow, whereas the struct are typically faster due to the stack allocation. Boxing, unboxing, class support boxing and unboxing, struct do not support boxing, unboxing. Now what is boxing, unboxing? Again, we have already done a video on that. You can have a look on that. I will give the link on the I button. Nullability, the class can be null. You can assign a null value to the class. Struct cannot be assigned as a null value. Alright, we are done for today. If you like this video, please click on the like button and do share this with your friends and fellow developers. If you are new to the channel, please click on a subscribe button and hit the notification bell to get a latest update. Thank you. Thanks for watching.